What's up everybody, Ratchetboy from Team ChainBlock coming at you with the top 16 Nationals Hero deck profile. Now before I get into it, I just want to say check out the links down in the description and use code ChainBlock5 when ordering anything from Kong's cards to get that sweet 5% off. Now let's get into it. I'm playing 45 cards in the main deck. I just wanted to increase the amount of cards in the deck so I'd have to draw the bricks less, so I just put in some extra consistency spells. So starting it off, we got 3 copies of Elemental Hero Stratos. Heart and Soul of the deck, like, it adds a hero on summon, that's pretty much it. We have 2 copies of Elemental Hero Shadow Mist. When it's sent to grave, adds a hero. When special summoned, adds a mask change. Crazy card, you can only use one of the effects per turn, but you're going to be only needing one majority of the time anyway. We're playing 1 copy of Liquid Soldier. I'll probably bump this up to 2. Card performed really well this weekend. It's crazy follow-up with when it's normal summoned, special summoning hero from grave, but majority of the time you're going to be using on your turn 1 in order to set up a wake up and drawing 2 and discarding 1 in the process. That is it for the Elemental Heroes. Let's move on to the Vision Heroes. First off, we're playing 3 copies of Vision Hero Faris. Now, this card can discard another hero monster to summon itself, and then it places a Vision Hero from your deck as a continuous trap. Target for that is Vision Hero Increase. This, unfortunately, is a hard garnet, meaning that you can't use it if you draw it, and your entire Vision Hero line becomes dead. So that's why we're playing the extra card. This card can tribute a hero while it's in the continuous trap zone to summon itself, and then if it's summoned this way, it can special summon another Vision Hero from deck, and the copy for that is Vision Hero Vion. Vion on summon sends a hero, and then it can banish a hero from grave in order to add poly. Crazy effect, really abusable with things like Shadow Mist. That is it for the Vision Heroes. We're moving on to the Destiny Heroes. We got 2 copies of Malicious and 1 copy of Denier. Insane cards. Malicious, not once per turn, banishes him from grave, summon a copy from deck, and Denier lets you recycle your Malicious and special summon himself on a once per duel restriction. Next up, we're also playing 1 copy of Dark Angel and 1 copy of Plasma. These cards are your big main deck blowout. Dark Angel lets you summon itself to your opponent's side of the field if you have 3 or more Destiny Heroes in grave, and then negates any spells they would activate. Meaning that you can negate something like Super Poly or Dark Ruler, since it doesn't activate, it's a continuous effect. And we also have Plasma. Plasma can only be special summoned by tributing 3 monsters, and then it's just skill drain against your opponent while it's on the field. These cards put in some really heavy lifting, going first into most of the meta archetypes, with this being able to lock your opponent's monster zones with Kashtira, and Plasma being able to stop monster heavy combo decks. Next up, for the hand traps, we're playing 3 copies of Drone Lockbird. Card is insane this format. You practically need to play 3 to stop Super Heavy Samurai, Math Mech, all those good old combo decks. We also have 2 copies of Ghost Ogre to stop those same decks. Also makes a big impact into things like Purely and Sprite, etc. Those are probably the best hand traps of this format. And those are the only ones I'm playing. Time to get on to the spells. We're playing 3 copies of A Hero Lives. Crazy card. If you control no face-up monsters, summon a elemental hero from deck. By paying half your life points, of course. Majority of the time, you're going to be special summoning a copy of Stratos to get your ad. We're also playing 3 Fusion Destiny. Probably the best card in this deck. It can just let you hard make DPE while sending Mali and Denier to grave in order to make you be able to go full combo while getting that DP up on board. We're also playing 3 copies of Mask Change, incredible for playing through boards, lets you get something like something like Darklaw even if you've been interrupted with something like a Droll, Imperm or Ash that would otherwise put a hard stop to your turn and make your end board really underwhelming. You want to draw this as much as possible, and if you don't draw it, no worries, you can search it with Shadow Mist. We also got 2 copies of Polymerization. You can play 1 in this deck. I choose to play the 2 because if you're going into a grind game, it's a really good search off Vion, just because you get to make multiple fusions in either a single turn or throughout the duration of the game without needing to recycle them. I was also playing 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talent and 2 copies of Triple Tactics Trust. Don't have them on me at the moment because I was borrowing them from some people and I gave them back before I could do the deck profile. Thrust was really good because it's just a crazy going second card, being able to add yourself the FD or the Talents, and Talents is just such a crazy card if you get drolled or get hand trapped or need to play through a board. Next up we have the one-ofs. We are playing 1 E-Emergency Call, 1 Reinforcements of the Army, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 Called By, and 1 Miracle Fusion. E-Emergency Call, Rota, and Foolish are all starters, those consistency spells I was talking about. Called By, of course, because the deck dies to draw, and Miracle Fusion is a really good fusion spell that lets you fuse by banishing monsters from grave, and it's searchable in this deck, so you only need the 1. Next up, we're going on to the traps. We have 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. That's it. Impermanence is really crazy, this format, in my opinion, because there's just so many rogue decks that I went up against, and it really puts into some some work for things like Super Heavy Samurai, Purely, Sprite, like Mathmech, Branded. It's just a crazy card overall. Next up, we have the extra deck. We have 1 copy of Absolute Zero, 1 copy of Sunriser, and 1 copy of Wake Up for your elemental hero monsters. Absolute Zero is a board wipe when it leaves the field. Sunriser lets you add your Miracle Fusion, and Wake Up can attack so many times and lets you special summon any hero from deck, any warrior from deck, sorry, when it's destroyed. Crazy card, lets you summon the Shadow Mist in a full combo state. For the Destiny Heroes, we're playing 2, not 1, but 2 copies of DPE. I played 2 just because I didn't want the a copy sniped by Kashtira with their Diabolos or Unicorn, so I found 2 to be the perfect ratio, since it's only the only really good card in the extra deck that you can't live without. Next up, we're playing 1 copy of Dystopia and 1 copy of Dangerous. Dangerous is really good because you get to send any Dark Effect monster from your deck to grave, majority of the time that being Shadow Mist with FD if you've already got access to DPE, and Dystopia is just there for burn damage on time. Next up, we have our Masked Heroes. We have 1 copy of Masked Hero Acid and 2 copies of Darklaw. Darklaw is really good, this format, into things like Mathmech, Branded, Super Heavy, Purely. It just hits basically everything, and hand ripping your opponent isn't bad at all. Acid, you can make that using Absolute Zero and Mask Change, and lets you wipe all your opponent's spell traps. That combined with Absolute Zero when he leaves the field destroying all monsters, combines for a really powerful full board wipe. Next up, for the Link monsters, we have 2 copies of Cross Crusader. This card is bonkers. If it's linked, summon target a Destiny Hero monster in grave, summon it, and then you can tribute a Destiny Hero monster to add any hero. This card is insane. It lets you go into your full combos from just Mali and Denier. Being able to get you that free full follow-up off of FD is absolutely insane. Also a crazy extender. It can let you search monsters 3 times per turn, technically. Next we have 1 copy of Wonder Driver. Lets you reset your polys, fusions, or mask changes. It's fine, but I wouldn't play it out more than 1. And for the last Link monster, we have 1 copy of Dread Decimator. This card is a house for pushing into lethal, and that's pretty much it. You make it with a spare Cross Crusader and swing for a gazillion damage over all of your opponent's stuff. Last card in the extra deck was 1 copy of Baguska. Didn't make this once. The idea behind this was that if you went a Hero Lives, summon Stratos, and add any level 4, you could just normal summon the level 4 and make Baguska if you were drolled. But it never came up once. You always had better things to do, and majority of the times your hand traps would clear. If they wouldn't, you were getting OTK'd anyway. Also, you can't really make this if you activated Cross Crusader that turn, because you cannot summon except heroes the turn you activated Cross Crusader's effect. Next up, for the side deck, we have 2 copies of Book of Moon and 2 copies of Book of Eclipse. Book of Moon is really good into cash, so is Book of Eclipse. Book of Moon's a tad bit more generic, so I would have played 3 copies of that most likely. Cash was a very popular deck, and I was not expecting it to be as popular, but it is what it is. Next up, we are playing 2 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. I just didn't want to go up against some rogue deck playing a lot of Floodgates and hard losing to it. Also good into things like Runic and Purely to an extent as well. And Mathmech, sniping that super factorial without needing to use any more resources stops them from getting all that advantage off of it. Next up, we have 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More. This card never came up today because I didn't draw it, but if I knew that if I did, I was going to win the game that turn because of the crazy OTK abilities of this game, of this deck, sorry. And this card is just insane. Being able to clear up boards without needing to worry about being interrupted is insane. Next up, we have 3 copies of Evenly Matched. This card is really good into decks that don't put up negates, such as Purely, Mathmech, to an extent, things like, I don't know, Kashtira, who's still in the format. This lets you wipe that entire board and still put up your own, paying the low price of your own battle phase. And the last 3 cards on the side were 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. This never came up either, but I knew if I could get Rivalry in hand and Dark Angel on my opponent's side of the field, I practically won at that stage because they couldn't Kaiju me, they couldn't Evenly me, they couldn't Dark Ruler me, they couldn't summon monsters, they couldn't activate spells. Like, at that stage of the game, you practically lose. So, this card is a crazy blowout. That is it for the deck profile. I went against a lot of Rogue today, so that was the majority of the matchups. But I did go against, the main deck I did go against was Kashtira, which I played 2 of, sadly. And I lost one of them just because the full Kashtira board is so oppressive if you don't draw any non-engine. The other one I won because Dark Angel is just such a crazy card. The deck is really good into Super Heavy Samurai, with Dark Law being able to lock your opponent from using their graveyard at all. And like, we all know how powerful Macrocosmos effects are, especially with Soul Piercer needing to go to the graveyard in order to trigger. Purely is a bit of an odd one. If you win the die roll, you kind of win if you get to put up Plasma, because Noir isn't affected by activated effects, but since Plasma doesn't activate, it's just negating the Purely Noir. DPE also puts up a lot of work into that deck, being able to just trade so well with the Noir Shuffle effect, because you just get to destroy whatever they targeted. And that is it for the deck profile. Once again, make sure to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and check out our friends over at Kong's Cards if you're buying any product. Thank you for watching and have a great day.